think we can just, okay, good evening. Welcome to the last panel. I'm sure we don't need a Gallup poll. There'll be excitement in the room. So certainly it's been a very exciting day of presentations and discussions. So we have a topic we are going to talk, which certainly is one of the key ingredients of the 5 drivers of innovation and competitiveness. And the topic is inclusiveness in innovation and competition across the world. So I have a very distinguished panel with me. You went through some of the introductions, but I would like to set it up with a brief framework of conversation, and then we'll go through the panel. Our planet reached a very important milestone. The global population has touched 8 billion. Certainly that's a staggering number. It grew 100% in last 50 years. Now we are not going to see that growth in next 50 years. The global population is slowing down, but certainly that's an immense population globally that we have to feed. They have to provide healthcare, they have to communicate, they have to get water and all the basic needs of sustenance. So how do we achieve that? Certainly we are listening for the last 2 days and including tomorrow. The pace of innovation has been staggering. And that's how we are solving a lot of problems. The population, the growth that is happening is being fed. You can see that countries in the world are able to produce enough food. The water is being provided, though there are challenges. But innovation pace has been staggering across the world, and this has been made possible by technological innovation, by services, new communication technologies, and definitely science and engineering. Now, the question is, though this innovation, the pace of innovation is going up, we are seeing a certainly big challenge coming up in terms of terms we hear, fine, digital divide, wealth disparity. So a lot of these things are being used more and more. In the history of mankind, the amount of wealth created in the last 3 decades is unimaginable. Never so much wealth has been created. But at the same time, the challenge has been the creation of wealth has happened in a very asymmetric fashion. We see in the United States the challenge of this complete vaporizing of middle class that's happening. You have things that happen, income is going to top 10%, others are not part of it. We are seeing that in education. So that will be the topic on which I will talk to my distinguished panelists here, who are going to talk from their own experience. We have a very diverse panel from experience standpoint. We have Mr. Sirigos, who's the Deputy Minister of Higher Education Issues. He is coming purely from government and execution of public policy standpoint. We have Mr. Papadumitru. He's certainly coming from an industry. Ernst & Young is one of the largest services company in the world. So they are seeing the trends of technology changing. They have to hire people. How do industry participate in that process? Mr. Christophilopoulos, certainly coming from an angle of research. He is looking at a scale, at a global scale, how competition and innovation can propagate. At the same point, it happens with including everyone in that process. And then Ms. Norton, University of Southampton, she is working on the global international partnerships. So we will listen to the views from our panelists, but again, the goal is to understand how we can make this process of innovation more inclusive, how we can keep on working on increasing the pace of innovation, but at the same time, we broaden the participation of the society in this process. So we will touch on 3 key things. One of them, drivers of inclusiveness. Secondly, what's working and what's not working. And third point is the role of industry and academia. So Mr. Sirigos, I will start with you, that how do you see inclusiveness, how do you include inclusiveness in this process of national growth?
From my point of view, when we speak about inclusiveness, I have in mind 2 things. The first is the social inequalities, which create a gap. Let me give you an example. During the last 2 years of the pandemic, we had all these systems which assisted students to follow lectures from their houses. Nevertheless, there are some groups of people which do not have access to the internet, do not have access to any digital part of the economy of the society, and were not able to participate in these e-classes. So the first question is how to fight social inequalities. And the reply, according to my view, is to offer to all students free education, education free of charge in all levels. That means primary and high school and university. I'm seeing the example of the United Kingdom. I had the privilege to do my postgraduate studies in the United Kingdom, and I'm surprised now to see the very high fees that people are obliged to pay in order to attend these courses. The second thing has to do with people with disabilities. When, some 40 years ago, 45 years ago, when I was a pupil, we were saying this student does not understand or is not able to write well on the blackboard. Now we know that there are many disabilities that are hidden. It is not something obvious. So what we have to do is to give to these people, to people with disabilities, the right to be included.
Okay. That's an excellent point. So I will, from an industry standpoint, fine, you have this social equality aspect to that, but you have to hire a workforce. How do you do that in your company? How do you scale that globally, that kind of a concept?
Yes, thank you. 1, 2. 1, 2. Does it work or?
It's
okay.
working now, yeah.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, let me comment on that on the diversity and inclusivity from a corporate perspective, right? And I will start with diversity first of all. Diversity from the industry perspective is clearly a need. You know, for us, it's not a challenge, it's an opportunity. And there are 3 key comments around that. The first is that we have a talent war. I mean, you talk to corporates in Greece, even within an environment of some unemployment, we still struggle to find the right talent. I mean, you talk to corporates from the construction industry, they will tell you cannot find enough engineers. You talk to services, we have struggling to find people from technology, and so it goes. So the ability to tap into all kinds of talent pool only on the basis of their merit is a need of survival in this talent war, yeah, to start with. The second thing is that this diversity that we see today, whether some people like it or not, will only increase in the future. So if this is a challenge today, and you need to be able to tap into all kinds of people in the market, that will only get worse in the future. So it's really important to be able to tap diverse people and profiles. The third, which I think is important, is that all academic research and evidence we have is that diversity supports performance. So there are many studies that say that the more diverse the working environment, the better the results of the company, but also it supports innovation. And this is perfectly intuitive, right? Bringing together different perspectives only helps the innovation process. So the base diversity is the mix, right? And it is there because there's a need to be there. So the question now is, what about inclusivity? How you ensure that you are tapping into all this diverse pool of talent in the market, but you integrate them. You have them feel welcome. You have them feel that you treat them equally. You have them feel that they can get promotion with equal terms. And there are a number of things that I think can make this work, yeah? The first, and I will cite 5 key things. The first is really the tone at the top and the set of guidelines and policies you have as a firm, yeah? To give a very strong message of where you stand for, what is accepted, what is not accepted, and have a level of policies around this theme. And we see that in a number of firms, including EY, so diversity and inclusiveness policies, anti-harassment policies, policies that ensure equal treatment of people, of female, of genders, of other things. So this is the first that we need there. The second that we need is learning, yeah, training and learning. So certainly there are biases out there. So, you know, everybody understands the need for diversity, but we do have biases in the working environment. So to give to the people the right learning, the right tools to address these biases is really important. So a number of learning and training initiatives on, you know, how you fight conscious bias. Yeah, it is there. It's not bad, but understanding that it is there, equipping the people with the tools to address this is really important, but also communicating through learning all your policies and guidelines that you have there. The third is about alliances. There are a number of organizations that treat and address the issue of diversity, of inclusiveness. So partnering with this organization, have common agenda. I mean, it can be mentoring, it can be common events. It really helps to advance this agenda in the organization. The fourth is about communication, making sure that you communicate to everybody within your corporation, your policies, your learning, your alliances, your events, and so on and so forth. And there are many ways how to do that. And last but not least, from my perspective, is metrics. Yeah? Unless you measure some things, they will never change. So to ensure that you measure that indeed there is no discrimination, that there's equal treatment, that in the way you promote people, you have the same standards. Hearing your people, you might think that you have a policy of inclusivity, but really listening to the people if they feel that they are themselves at work, if they feel that there's an environment of inclusivity, is ultimately the best metric.
Thank you. I think you ended with measurement or metrics. So, Mr. Christopher Paulus, you do research. You are a UNESCO chair. There are a lot of roles you have in terms of trying to understand at a global scale, both locally in Greece, but also globally, how competition and innovation is driven by inclusiveness, or just how you broaden the participation across a broader segment of societies, bring them in this process to have more efficient and useful innovation coming out of research. So
let me try to be a bit provocative and not talk about what drives inclusiveness or what policies can we use to address inclusiveness, but let me say a few things about how inclusiveness is a driver of the futures that we are going to experience today. So I have been involved or designed a couple of studies recently, like the innovation landscape for Greece towards 2035, the work 2050, and some others. So in all these studies, all these scenarios that we have produced for the future, it was obvious that inclusiveness pops up very emphatically. And pops up, as it was already said, as a catalyzer for the innovation process, but also as a key aspect of what kind of futures we're going to see, because how inclusive we are going to be also in the services and the social impact of innovation, it's going to be a crucial point for social peace, for societal peace. So that was a very crucial point. And so it is really a critical point to have the right policies to address this issue. Now, let me also talk about one more thing, and this is on the roots of the innovation creation. So when we create a new innovation or when we create a new technology, actually it is the people or the team that is creating this innovation that decides what to do and mirrors their values, their ideas about the world. So there is now we are experiencing a very critical point, and I will refer to the issue of artificial intelligence. What we see today, and we are experiencing a lot of research taking place in the process of moving from narrow artificial intelligence to the general artificial intelligence. Narrow is what we're experiencing today. The general probably will take most of the decisions on behalf of us. So what is happening is that this work is taking place mainly in few elite universities in the States. Some of them are in China, but most of the research is taking place in the United States. And also the applications of this research is done in 9 big companies. 6 of them are in the States, 3 of them are in China. So we're talking about Facebook, IBM, Google, Amazon, Apple, I think I don't miss one, and Baidu, Tencent, and Alibaba in China. So what we see is that we see algorithms and systems developed that actually mirroring this very homogeneous group of people that they have studied in the same universities. They are mostly white men. Even the Chinese, they have studied in the same American universities. And this is going to be a problem because the decisions that are going to be taken in the future on behalf of us are going to mirror the values and the ideas of this very homogeneous group. So I will close with this, because this might appear to be a critical, even existential risk for humanity.
Wow, that's very interesting. Ms. Norton, you're from University of Southampton, so you have a different perspective from an academic standpoint. So how do you see, as drivers of inclusiveness, how do you see from an academic institution standpoint? And also you do global partnerships. How does it play in your day-to-day activities?
Okay. Inclusiveness at the University of Southampton is a feature of our education and our research. In education, we're talking about accessibility. So we want our education offer to appeal to a range of constituents. Mature students, single parents, care leavers, the first generation to university. You can add to the list of underrepresented groups at universities. And for this social capital to grow, we need to include students, people from all walks of life, from all ethnicities. So we draw our students not just from the UK, but worldwide. And we have a number of infrastructures to support this. So this matters to us. In fact, a few years ago, we created a widening participation team. This team, they have the resources to support underrepresented groups. They provide guidance. So in the case, you can imagine, of first generation to university, that's crucial. They provide mentoring, hardship funds, and the like. We have programs that cater to different learning styles, needs. The assessment follows through on that. You can imagine now it's modular, it's hybrid, it's not end-of-year exam. We have financing that enables a range of students to join UK universities. We have scholarships. So at Southampton, of the 6,000 international students we have, over 1,000 benefit from fee waiver scholarships. There's the UK flagship Schevening Scholarship, Commonwealth Scholars, but we have a real broad range of scholarships, and this really helps for diversity amongst the student population. If I look at research briefly, we really support interdisciplinary research because we know that's where you're going to find most creativity, most diversity. By its very nature, it is inclusive, interdisciplinary research. Even in STEM subjects, where you're going to find a bias towards more male researchers, when you're doing interdisciplinary research, it's so much easier to involve female researchers. And this breaks out, actually, from the discipline, the traditional discipline boundaries that we find still evident in the education piece. So at least the research piece is helping take us forward in terms of gender equity in all fields. So what we've done, and I'll finish with the two sort of things we've done. We've got two associate vice presidents for interdisciplinary research. We've got Professor John Holloway, he's a medic. We've got Professor Rebecca Hoyles, she does stats. And it's their remit to really push interdisciplinary research throughout the institution. They've got pump priming funds to enable it, and we're just about to launch a sustainability hub. So that's an institute that's going to be a focal point for fostering this research. So basically, our vision is one of inclusion, connection, and compassion.
Thank you. I think we are kind of seeing, as you're peeling this topic, how complicated it can get. It has a social aspect, financial aspect, race, gender, all of these things really make this inclusivity such a complicated topic. Mr. Sirigos, this COVID last 2 years opened up a lot of this problem. We knew about, this is an important aspect of innovation, but it truly tested kind of our processes. When this COVID-19 happened, suddenly we had to implement. Now it happened in institutions, you had to implement something at a countrywide level. So what are the few things you had to do? But now, since the crisis is behind us, we are going to implement those things, maybe potentially as a policy or a future decision, to bring some of the concepts that played out and is going to be there forever.
Well, the situation that Greece faced was not different than the situation faced by all the countries of the world. So we have to pass from the life education to the e-education within weeks. In most of the cases, it proved that it worked. Nevertheless, I have to say, because I'm also teaching at the university, I'm a professor of international law, we have discovered that there are some things that cannot be replaced by e-education. For example, when I was giving a lecture, because I was giving lectures during the time at the university, quite often I had the feeling that I was speaking to a wall because there was no reaction from the students. From time to time, I was stopping and I was asking, do you follow? And a voice was saying, yes. But the reality was that you didn't have this interaction that you needed. Nevertheless, it was a need. I do not think that life education can be replaced in most of the cases. Nevertheless, we can have, I think, one of the concepts we learned is, in case of need, we have another system that can be used. Secondly, this may apply to all the students or to some of the students. That gives the opportunity to some of the students who are not able to participate in the classroom to participate from their houses. Third, you can have in small groups, you can have e-education. You cannot have it in large groups. Right. You cannot have it if you speak to 50, 70 students. But if you have 15 students, like it happens in most postgraduate programs, then you can have e-learning. And another issue that came to the surface, at least in Europe, there is an initiative called European Universities. This gives the ability to students from Greece, from France, from Italy, to follow lectures, for example, at the University of Heidelberg, or at the University of Sorbonne, or at the University of Athens, and see how the other students there react in these courses. This is something new. What we did is that we developed a strategic action for the e-access to, at least for the universities, because this is the field where this may take place. And we focused especially on the issue of lifelong learning and postgraduate studies.
Okay. I'll follow up on from a corporate industry standpoint. There is a constant need for you to not only have a growing workforce, but also diverse, innovative workforce. So from a policy standpoint, and not only just because of COVID, but as a large company with a global workforce, how do you try to, in a deliberate way, build inclusiveness in your workforce? From just example, from a hiring standpoint, like what are the key things as a senior management you try to do so that you are not stagnated with a very homogeneous team? So any examples will be helpful.
Yes, I mean, as said, first of all, it starts with the realization that we need to do that, right? So very, very high on our agenda is that we want to be diverse because there's a reality out there that we need to tap. So this is on the top of the agenda. Of course, there's a number of policies and framework behind to ensure that we go towards this direction. So we follow specific metrics to ensure that, in terms of hiring, we hire with a fair and represented way across a number of dimensions, whether it is gender, whether it is sexual orientation, whether it is ethnicity, where you name it. When you go to the global, you have all these kind of different perspectives. And this is cascaded as well down to each of the member firm. So it is a set of policies, it is a set of metrics, reporting and KPIs that help us to always have an eye on that and push it forward.
Mr. Christofoulopoulos, you gave a great example of AI. And there are a lot of these ICT areas where this is going to be a problem. So again, from your vantage point, how do you solve a problem like this? Well, a lot of innovators presently who are doing that, they are part of playing into the same game. How do you expand the field of innovators who are coming into it so that this problem slowly gets resolved by itself. Now, certainly you might have some policies to deal with that, but what's a better solution to bring in much more broader inclusive group of innovators to the stage?
I will be the bad guy again. You're right. We are talking today about inclusiveness, but we are talking not only today. It's becoming a buzzword. Like as we are talking about innovation a few decades ago, resilience, sustainability, even climate change. So we understand the problem. We set up policies, but in most of the cases, everywhere, these policies are somehow incomplete or very narrow and not as systemic as they should be. And we have heard today, since the morning, several policies, and most of them are correct, but they do not address the problem as a whole. And we are missing policies that will involve several groups also in the part of setting the targets of innovation, setting the regulations also, and this is almost completely missing. And we are also missing, there is another tricky point. We are setting this policy, but there is a conflict, there is a trade-off between economic performance and this kind of policy. So we need also to establish a framework that will deal with this issue. Now, and I will close, and I will underline two more issues related with inclusivity. There are two other dimensions. The one dimension is inclusivity on a country level. I mean, the innovation is taking place in specific countries, but some other countries are left outside from this process. So we need also to find ways to include countries that are not part of this process. The second dimension, and this is also related with the issue of human rights. The human rights is a principle that we all accept, but most of the human rights or we lose it when we lose our citizenship. So the human rights are protected as long as you are a citizen of a specific country. And in today's world, where we have a lot of immigration, and we expect to have more immigration in the future, also we are experiencing a shortage of brains on the West world because of demographics. So we need to find also ways to have policies for inclusivity to this group of immigrants. And this is going to be a game changer for the West and also globally.
Yep, I agree with that. I think that is one of the, with the global population increasing and this geopolitics playing out, that will be a future challenge, but it's an opportunity too. You know, we see that in many countries, how immigrants come and build these businesses. United States, an example, half of the unicorns have been started by students who came to study there or immigrants who came to the country and built it. So a level playing field for everyone have access to the tools to innovate is very important. So from an academic standpoint, you kind of laid out kind of a few things that you do, and which are certainly being replicated globally to achieve similar goals. Things that you have taken as a policy, which were previously being good practices, but you have made those things as policies in your inclusiveness and diversity efforts. If you can give a few examples of that, would be helpful.
Okay, all right. I'll pick up a bit more about the scholarships and international piece, okay. But also I'll pick up on something that was just earlier mentioned about consciousness bias. This is something that all staff at the University of Southampton, we have training in, and it's called active bystander. You might be familiar with that training. So just by the way, we also have training and development to ensure that we are more tuned in to being inclusively minded. Well, with the international piece, in fact, our Vice-Chancellor committed us to providing an international experience for each and every student. So we have about 24,000 students in total, and as I mentioned earlier, 6,000 are international, so they come from overseas and pay those horrible international fees, unless they're on a scholarship, and there are actually full fee waiver scholarships, as I mentioned, for over 1,000 of those 6,000. And then we have other types of scholarships as well, which contribute. So we're aware the business model is what it is. That's politics. I'm not here to do that right now.
No, that's perfect.
Okay, but what we are also trying to do then, through our international scholarship programs, we are really broadening them out So I, in fact, manage the International Scholarships team as well as part of my role, part of my portfolio. And what we've done in the past couple of years is add a few very interesting scholarship programs. And this is actually thanks to the British Council's support. So that's the UK's organisation for establishing friendly relationships between the UK and the world. One of them is the Afghan Warm Welcome Scholarship, new scholarship. So over the past couple of years, we've received a number of Afghan students that they were enabled to escape from Afghanistan and come and study with us. I was talking to one on Thursday. He's starting up an MBA with us, for example. Another program we've been doing is Women in STEM. That's another new scholarship program that we've taken on board. We've persuaded the faculties to waiver their fees. So that's talking to the deans, to waiver fees for these women that have come from India and Pakistan on that, to take up master's programs and PhDs in science, technology, maths, and so on. So this is also helping our diversity and inclusivity. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that leads into a question to you. So from a
Right.
higher education standpoint, certainly innovation, entrepreneurship has a much, much bigger role in society, and you have a lot of other ministries or other divisions within the government are also working on that. So what are, from a standpoint of effectively implementing your policies, that you have more inclusive students coming in, diverse group of students who previously might not think of going to college, or those students who might be dropping out of college. And again, this is a very country-specific problem, and it might not be there everywhere, but how do you make sure that you have a group of students who are getting the education they should get? At the same point, you're able to keep them in the education system to move beyond and be productive citizens. Is that something, an issue here you see?
In most of the European countries, there is this concept that education has to be free offered to all levels. And this is very important for social mobility. This started in Greece for universities back in 1964, and it continues thereafter. Let me give you an example. Greece, I believe, is the only country in the world where the state provides to the students all the textbooks free of charge. So what is very important is to give to the students the ability to go ahead without thinking that they have to pay. Of course, this is good when we speak in general, but there are many other cases. Let me give you an example. For example, there is a good student who enters to university which is not the place where he lives. He has to go somewhere else. In that case, we have to give these students the ability to move to the other place, to offer them financial and financial assistance, which is not the case in Greece. Many students do not have access to these opportunities. And it's something that we are working on in order to be able to give to these students the ability to study out of their hometown. I consider as very important what is happening with students with disabilities, because this is a field where we have to work a lot. And we recently passed a law which obliges universities, first of all, to have equal access units, which are going to follow all the special educational needs of these students, and to offer to these students fees, exemptions, and discounts whenever it is possible. And we're going to introduce now a new card, which includes, in this card, it will include all the certificates needed for a student to prove that he has certain disabilities, so he's liable to have all these fees, exemptions, discounts, etc., etc.
We have 10 minutes. I'll start. Yeah.
Sorry,
Yes.
just a follow-up perspective on your previous questions, if you allow me, right? A bit on the innovation inclusiveness from an industry perspective. I think there are two important sides, right? One is the one I covered, which is how you make sure that you tap into a diverse pool of talent and you have the inclusiveness culture to have them work within an industry corporate organization. A second, though, equally important from my perspective, is how you ensure that the people you have participate and are included in the innovation agenda, because this is not self-evident, right? And I think there is a realization needed that if not everybody in today's disruptive world takes part in the innovation agenda, a company faces the risk to die, to put it very, very simple. Right. So you take a company like EY, you think it's a global resilient giant, right, that's not affected from this disruptive environment. And yet, a number of the things that we do, from filing tax returns to fraud investigations, to some simple audit procedures, they could be automated in the future, and we could have a tech company that provides all our services for a cheaper price. So it is important for everyone, This is the first point from my perspective. The second is that since it is important for everyone, if you don't give the time and space to the people to do that, this cannot flourish, right? So focus on short-term results, on profitability, on gross margin, on utilization of your people. All these things do not go well together with including everybody in innovation agenda, which is more long-term. The third is obviously the culture. So if you don't have a culture of openness, of curiosity, having people challenge the status quo within the company, help you change things. Most importantly, if you don't have a culture where people feel the safety of the right to fail, I mean, innovation cannot flourish within the environment. The fourth point I will say, which is important for including everybody in this innovation agenda, would be ecosystems. So, really important to partner with academia, to partner with startups. There is a lot of talent out there to tap into, which may not have access to the depth of the business problems that need to be solved. So the more connections you build, the more you can have more people thinking about the innovation agenda. And last but not least, you need the framework. You cannot command innovation and ask everybody to participate. You need the process. You need the system to get the ideas, to filter, to give back feedback, what works, what does not work. So a process and framework ensures that everybody can, in practice, participate in this innovation agenda.
Absolutely fantastic points. I'll move on to you in terms of, how do you measure the outcomes? Like, we are talking about this massive, social experiment sometimes. How can we can, of course, have laws and rules and processes, but anything comes to your mind that, what kind of outcomes you will see from a research standpoint to see that, okay, it's working?
Well, before coming to this conference, I did some research to find some numbers, and I find a very interesting article published from the London School of Economics. So it says that 30% of companies enjoy benefits, increasing in earnings because of the innovation process, and only 10% of companies are reaching the inclusivity targets. So in both cases, both in terms of innovation and in terms of inclusivity, there is a huge margin for improvement. The other interesting number of this article was that the companies that are more inclusive, they have 1.7 more times more possibility to be the leaders, the innovation leaders in their field. So these are three numbers from a big statistics study that was performed. And it says a lot about how important is inclusivity in relation with innovation. Because we don't have time, I will just say that in my field, which is future studies and foresight, the field started with what we call today forecasting, and it is only analyzing data and doing some modeling. And then in the next decades moved in a more inclusive way and methods with participatory workshops and big questionnaires with a lot of experts in order to be more inclusive, to have more views in the process. And what we are experiencing today, the last decade, is that we have realized that even this is not enough. So we realized that in order to have a process that it's not myopic and it's really open to the views of the society, we need to involve non-experts also in the process. But this is extremely difficult. First, because it's very difficult to convince the client, if it is the government or if it is a private company, it is very difficult to convince them that we have to involve external people, plain people in the process. The second aspect it is that it's extremely difficult to find these people and involve them in the process, even if we have the permission to do it. It's extremely difficult. So at least we acknowledge that what we do at the end of the day, it's biased, it's not complete. So even this, it's something that we have agreed in our discipline.
Yeah. So education, social mobility, frameworks, removal of bias. So Ms. Norton, why don't you take us home and see from an academic standpoint, what you have done or what's the future, a few things you'd like to do to see these things becoming more effective, and you can have some outcomes you feel like, keeps you moving in the right direction.
You asked about measurements. What are we measuring? In the UK, we have things like the knowledge exchange framework. We have a net promoter score of student satisfaction. We look to global rankings like the QS, that's the Quacquarelli-Symonds rankings universities. In all of these, the University of Southampton has been on an upward trend these past few years. We're currently 78th in the whole wide world in the QS, for example. We were 77th last year. In terms of how we're reaching more diverse population and getting our education out there, we've got 17 MOOCs, massive open online courses. As you're aware, these are free, easy to access, anytime, anywhere is kind of the message on those. They're on FutureLearn platform. We're currently creating an 18th MOOC, and that's actually on the internationalization of higher education. And that came out of a collaboration that I started up with Brazil. So we're also looking at branch campuses. That's another way of getting education out there. Won't say where, can't say where, but we're looking at a few locations in the world, and that's transnational education, of course. So there's a few projects going on. I don't know if I can throw this one in there.
But when you think globally, do you kind of take the same principles with your global partners, like what you're using in your home institution? Do you try to apply that with the global partners too?
That's right. And in fact, I've been leading delegations overseas to partners where we have shared values and to spark new research, and of course to establish more student exchange and mobility as well. So this year we focused on Brazil, Japan, India, just pre-pandemic US. So yes, we do have a few targets. We will be, my colleagues will be meeting the Greek Minister for Education in London on Monday. So yeah, we're international and we're interested in partnering, yes.
Fantastic. So with that, we have a minute left, so I'd like to thank everyone in the panel. It's 6:30, so time to have a drink, and I think that's absolutely wraps up a fantastic day. Great topic, great insights, and I wish you all the best in what you do, and we'll see you in the evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Know that I have background in manufacturing. So either as a consultant or as an entrepreneur. And one of the things that I focused in my personal life was in that space was really increasing assets utilization. How can we do that in manufacturing space? And if there's one asset that we are wasting the potential today in the globe is human capital. We're not using the brains as we could, as we keep people outside of the innovation economy. So I think that we just had an amazing panel about including people into the innovation economy. And we finished this day with two ideas in my mind. That's how I'm finishing the day. One is optimism. I think that we all understand that we are going through a bumpy road, but there are very interesting signs of progress. The other idea is speed. So we need to accelerate transformation. We need to accelerate lots of things to go into a better future. But talking about speed and just transitioning to some remarks on logistics, you will need to be fast because our bus will leave from the hotel at 7 p.m. So speed is very important. Please have that in mind. We will go to the Acropolis Museum for our gala dinner. We'll continue tomorrow morning. We'll have welcome coffee at 9 a.m. and our sessions covering the future, place, and society will start at 9:30. It was a pleasure to be here today with you. And again, on behalf of the GFCC CMOS, I want to thank you, Compete Greece, Venetia, I hope she's well now, and also the Delphi Economic Forum, Simeon and the whole team for the amazing partnership. See you soon. Please don't forget, speed, 7 p.m. Here's your cue.